The unfortunate tradition. Aisha sat in her small, cluttered bedroom, surrounded by the familiar sounds of her family's bustling household. The smell of freshly baked naan wafted from the kitchen, mingling with the sound of her mother's laughter and the chatter of her siblings. But despite the warmth and comfort of her home, Aisha's heart felt heavy with anxiety. In a few days, she would be turning 18, and her parents had begun making preparations for a celebration, or so she thought. Aisha had overheard her mother and aunts discussing something in hushed tones, their voices laced with an air of secrecy and importance. She had tried to brush it off as mere gossip, but the words sunnat and becoming a woman kept echoing in her mind. Aisha knew that in some Muslim communities, female genital mutilation (FGM) was still practiced as a rite of passage. She had learned about it in school, and her friends had whispered about it in horror, but she had never thought it would happen to her. Her parents were modern, educated people, and she had always assumed they would never subject her to such a barbaric tradition. As the days passed, Aisha's anxiety grew. She tried to talk to her parents, to ask them about the rumors, but they just smiled and told her not to worry. "It's a family tradition, Beta," her mother would say. "You'll understand when the time comes." But Aisha didn't want to understand. She wanted to scream, to run away, to hide. She felt like she was living in a nightmare, trapped in a world where her body was not her own. One night, as she lay in bed, Aisha decided she had had enough. She couldn't just sit back and wait for her parents to take her to some backroom clinic where a stranger would perform a brutal and unnecessary procedure on her. She needed a plan, and she needed it fast. The next morning, Aisha snuck out of the house, making her way to the local mosque. She had always found solace in the words of the Quran, and she hoped to find some guidance in the scriptures. As she sat in the quiet, peaceful atmosphere of the mosque, she began to read about the rights of women in Islam. What she found shocked her. There was no mention of FGM in the Quran, no hadith that supported the practice. In fact, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had spoken out against harming or mutilating the human body. Aisha felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How could her parents, who claimed to be devout Muslims, ignore the teachings of their own faith? With newfound determination, Aisha decided to confront her parents. She marched back home, her heart pounding in her chest, and demanded to know the truth. "Why are you doing this to me?" she asked, her voice shaking with emotion. "Why are you putting me through this?"
Her parents looked at her, taken aback by her outburst. For a moment they seemed unsure of how to respond. Then her mother spoke up, her voice laced with a mix of defensiveness and sadness. "We're doing it because it's what our mothers, grandmothers did," she said. "It's a tradition, Aisha. It's what makes us women." Aisha felt a wave of frustration wash over her. "But it's not Islamic," she argued. "It's not what the Quran teaches. And it's not what I want." The argument continued, with Aisha's father chiming in, trying to justify the practice as a way to protect her from promiscuity. But Aisha was having none of it. She stood her ground, citing verses from the Quran, and arguing that FGM was a form of oppression, not liberation. As the debate raged on, Aisha's siblings began to take notice. They had always known that FGM was a controversial topic, but they had never seen their sister so passionate, so determined. Slowly, they began to nod in agreement, supporting Aisha's stance against the practice. In the end, it was Aisha's father who threw up his hands, defeated. "Fine," he said, his voice gruff. "We won't do it. But you have to promise us one thing. You'll always remember where you come from, and you'll never forget the traditions of our family." Aisha smiled, a mix of relief and triumph on her face. "I promise," she said. "But I'll also remember that our traditions should never hurt or harm us. And I'll make sure to teach my own children the same thing one day." As the family hugged, tears of joy and relief streaming down their faces, Aisha knew that she had won a small victory. She had stood up for herself, for her body, and for her faith. And she had done it with humor, with love, and with a deep understanding of what it means to be a Muslim woman. The celebration of Aisha's 18th birthday was a lively, laughter-filled affair, with all of her friends and family in attendance. There were no whispers of FGM, no hushed discussions of becoming a woman. Just a joyful, noisy party, filled with music, food, and love. As Aisha blew out the candles on her cake, she grinned at her parents, her siblings, and her friends. She knew that she still had a long way to go, that there would be many more challenges ahead. But for now, she was just happy to be herself, to be a strong, confident Muslim woman, unapologetically funny and unapologetically free.